For 3 years, I thought she might come back. But I was just the guy she ventured to when her boyfriend ignored her. I wish I could say I saw it coming, but I didn't. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to admit it. Looking back, the signs were there. I ignored them because I was in love, and when you're in love, you convince yourself of things that aren't real. I met Emily during our second year of college. She was the kind of girl everyone liked. Bright, charming, effortlessly beautiful. She had this way of making you feel important when she talked to you, like you were the only person in the room. I wasn't the first guy to fall for her, and I probably wouldn't have been the last. But somehow, I was the one she chose. And for 2 years, I felt like the luckiest guy alive. We were happy, at least I thought we were. We did everything together. Late-night drives, weekend getaways, study sessions that turned into hours of talking about nothing and everything. She was my best friend, and I was hers, or so I believed. Then she got her internship. It was a prestigious program, one she had worked hard for. I was proud of her. But almost overnight, things started changing. At first, it was small. She was busier, had less time to text, canceled a few plans. I told myself it was normal. She was just adjusting to a demanding schedule. But then, the small changes became big ones. She stopped calling me before bed like she used to. She started taking hours to reply to messages. Sometimes she didn't reply at all. The worst part? She didn't even seem to notice that things were different. When I brought it up, she just smiled and said, "It's just work, babe. You're overthinking it." I wanted to believe her. So I did. The night I should have known was the night I saw the Instagram story. It was just a photo, nothing crazy. A dinner table, a dimly lit restaurant, a glass of wine, and a bouquet of red roses. My stomach dropped. I don't know why, but it did. Maybe it was because I hadn't given her roses in months. Maybe it was because she hadn't mentioned going out that night. Maybe it was because deep down, I already knew. I asked her about it the next day, trying to keep my voice casual. "Saw your story last night. What was the occasion?" She laughed. "Oh, that? My coworker got them from her boyfriend. I just thought they looked nice, so I posted it." It was a good lie, smooth, harmless, and I believed her, because I wanted to. 2 months later, she broke up with me. She came over to my place, looking sad but not devastated. That should have been my first clue. When someone is about to lose the person they love, they should look wrecked. But she looked resigned, like she had already processed it. "I just feel like we've grown apart," she said. "I don't know, I think we're at different points in life right now." I asked her if there was someone else. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she shook her head. "No, of course not. This isn't about anyone else." Another lie. I could have fought for her, begged, pleaded, tried to convince her that we could fix whatever was broken. But something in her eyes told me it wouldn't matter. She had already left me long before she actually said the words, so I let her go. For weeks I went through the motions. I convinced myself it was just bad timing, that maybe one day we'd find our way back to each other. But then, just 2 weeks after our breakup, I saw it, an Instagram post. Emily, holding hands with someone else. The caption? Just a heart emoji. It wasn't the post that broke me, it was the realization that she had moved on so quickly. No, not moved on. She had already been halfway out the door while I was still standing in the room. She had just been waiting for the right time to let go, and I was stupid enough to think she had ever truly meant to stay. I should have blocked her. I should have erased her number, ignored her texts, and moved on like she did. But I didn't. Because when Emily reached out, I wasn't over her, not even close. It started small, just a random text one evening. "Hey, how have you been?" I stared at my screen for a long time before replying. Part of me knew better, but another part, the part that still ached when I thought about her, wanted to believe that maybe this meant something. I kept my response short. "I'm okay. You?" She replied almost immediately. "I miss talking to you." And just like that, I was back in her orbit. At first, it was just casual conversations, little check-ins, as if we were just old friends catching up. She asked about my job, my family, my hobbies. She told me about work, about how things weren't as great as they seemed. She never mentioned her boyfriend, and I never asked. But over time, the messages became more frequent. She started calling late at night, like she used to when we were together. Sometimes she sounded happy, like nothing had changed. Other times, she sounded Lost. I just feel like I can talk to you in a way I can't with anyone else, she said one night. You always understood me. And that was all it took. That one sentence. Because in that moment, I forgot everything. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the months I had spent trying to put myself back together. None of it mattered. She needed me again. So I let her in. The first time she cried on the phone, I should have walked away. It was about her boyfriend, though she never called him that when she talked to me. He was always just him, as if naming him would somehow make what we were doing more real. I don't know, she sighed. Sometimes I just feel like he doesn't really see me, you know? Like I try so hard to make him happy, but it's never enough. I clenched my jaw, biting back the words I wanted to say. You picked him. You chose him over me. But instead I asked what happened. And she told me about their fights, about how he was distant, how he didn't listen the way I did, about how sometimes she wondered if she made a mistake. And that's when I started to hope. Because if she was doubting things, maybe, just maybe, she'd realize what we had was worth fighting for. Maybe she'd come back to me. So I stayed. I became her safe place again, and she knew it. This went on for months. During the day, she was his girlfriend, going on vacations, posting happy pictures, playing the part of the perfect couple. But at night, when things weren't perfect, she turned to me. It was a cycle. She would have a fight with him, and suddenly I was the one she called. I was the one she vented to, the one who reassured her, the one who told her she deserved to be happy. And every time I let myself believe that this meant something, that she was slowly realizing I was the right choice. But I was wrong. Because no matter how many times she cried to me, no matter how many times she hinted at doubts, she never left him. And I was too blind to see what was really happening. I wasn't the one she wanted. I was just the one she needed when things got hard. I should have walked away long before this moment. Any sane person would have. But I wasn't sane. I was in love with someone who didn't love me back. Not in the way I wanted, not in the way I needed. And because of that, I let myself be used for 3 years. 3 years of late-night calls when things weren't going well with him. 3 years of hearing, I don't know what I'd do without you. 3 years of false hope. But this was the final straw. I found out in the worst possible way, through Instagram. A photo of Emily laughing, a sparkling diamond ring on her finger, forever with my best friend. I stared at the screen, my mind blank. She hadn't mentioned this to me. Not once. The last time we spoke, just a week ago, she had called me in tears. Another fight, more doubts, more I just don't know if this is right. I had listened, I had comforted her, and then she turned around and said yes to him. It hit me like a punch to the gut. Not just because she was engaged, but because it confirmed what I had refused to accept all along. I was never an option. I was just her emotional safety net. Someone she leaned on when things were bad, but discarded the moment things were good again. I wasn't even worth a goodbye. 2 days after the announcement, she texted me. Hey, I hope you're okay. I wanted to tell you before posting, but everything happened so fast. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. She didn't want to tell me beforehand, because she knew. She knew what she had been doing to me for years. For the first time in a long time, I was angry. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to explode, to call her out for every moment of manipulation, every night she had cried to me about him while planning a future with him. But when I finally answered, my response was short. Congrats, I hope you're happy. She responded immediately. You're not mad? She wanted permission. She wanted me to tell her it was okay, that what she had done to me, what she had been doing for years, was fine. But I didn't owe her that. I didn't reply. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that I finally learned my lesson and walked away for good. But people like Emily? They don't let go of their safety nets so easily. A month later she called me again. I let it go to voicemail, then she texted. I miss talking to you. Can we just be friends? Friends, like the past 3 years meant nothing. Like she hadn't strung me along while she built a life with someone else. Like I hadn't wasted years of my life waiting for a future that was never going to happen. I didn't answer, and for the first time in a long time I felt like I was finally moving on. I'd love to say I finally cut her off for good after she got engaged. That I saw her for what she was and walked away with my dignity intact. That I finally chose myself. But that's not what happened. Because when she reached out again, I answered. And I hate myself for it. I lasted 3 months. 3 whole months of silence, of ignoring her texts, of trying to convince myself that I was better off. But then, one night, my phone lit up with her name. I shouldn't have picked up. I knew I shouldn't have, but my hands moved on their own, like some pathetic reflex I hadn't trained out of myself yet. "Hey," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. She let out a shaky breath, like she had been waiting for this. "I didn't think you'd answer." I should have hung up right then, but I didn't, because the truth is I still wanted to hear her voice. That's the worst part of all of this. It's not that she used me, it's that I let her. Over and over again. She didn't say it outright, but I knew why she was calling. She needed me again. "Things have just been a lot lately," she sighed. "I don't know, I feel like I don't have anyone to talk to." It was the same script she had used for years, the same way she had reeled me back in every time I tried to move on. But this time it was worse, because she was engaged, because she had chosen him, publicly and permanently. And yet here she was, still keeping me on the hook, still refusing to let me go completely. "I thought you'd be happy now," I said, my voice colder than I felt. "Isn't that what you always wanted?" She was silent for a moment. Then, quietly, she admitted, "I don't know anymore." And just like that, she had me again. I let her vent. I let her cry. I told myself I was just being a good friend, that I was stronger now, that I wouldn't let myself fall back into old patterns. But deep down, I knew. I was still waiting for her to change her mind. I was still hoping, after everything. And I hated myself for it. It wasn't some big dramatic moment. It wasn't a sudden realization. It was just exhaustion. One night she called again. Same story, same complaints, same "I just feel like you're the only one who really gets me." And for the first time, I didn't care. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just done. I interrupted her mid-sentence. "Emily." She stopped talking. "Yeah? I can't do this anymore." She was silent. Then she laughed nervously. "What do you mean?" "I mean this. Us. Whatever this is. I can't keep being the person you call when you're unhappy, only to be forgotten when things are fine." "That's not fair." "It is fair," I cut her off. "You don't love me, you just don't want me to leave." She sucked in a breath like I had slapped her. And maybe in a way I had, but it was the truth. And for once I was saying it for myself. "I have to go," I said, and this time I meant it. And then I hung up. I blocked her number, deleted our messages, removed her from social media. I thought it would hurt, but all I felt was relief, because for the first time in 3 years, I was finally free. Too late, but still, finally, free. Looking back, I have to be honest with myself. Emily wasn't the only one at fault. Sure, she manipulated me, used me when it was convenient, and strung me along for years. But at the end of the day, she didn't force me to stay. I chose to. That's the part that stings the most. I wasn't a victim. I was a willing participant. I saw the signs, I felt the hurt, and yet I stayed. Over and over again. I made excuses for her behavior, twisted her half-hearted affection into something meaningful, and ignored every gut feeling telling me that I deserved better. Why? Because I was weak. Because I was afraid. Because I let my feelings for her blind me to the truth. She was never mine to begin with. I built this fantasy in my head where she would eventually realize her mistake, come running back to me, and everything would fall into place. I romanticized the waiting, the suffering, the longing, like if I just held on long enough, I would earn my happy ending. But love isn't something you earn through patience. It's not a prize for enduring pain. Real love is given freely. It doesn't keep you waiting in the dark while someone else enjoys the light. For 3 years, I let her dictate my happiness. Every time she reached out, my heart latched onto the smallest breadcrumb of attention, mistaking it for love. And every time she pulled away, I let myself believe that if I just waited a little longer, she'd come back for real. But she never did, and the truth is, she never intended to. She wasn't keeping me around because she loved me. She was keeping me around because she loved the security I gave her. I was the emotional safety net. The person she could turn to when things with her real boyfriend got tough. The person who would always answer, always listen, always be there. And the worst part? I let her. I let her call me late at night when she was upset. I let her cry to me about the guy she chose over me. I let her say things like, "I don't know if I made the right choice," giving me just enough false hope to keep me hanging on. And even when she got engaged, even when I saw with my own eyes that she was planning a future with someone else, I still answered when she called. I hate myself for that. I hate that I was so desperate for her love that I let myself be reduced to a backup plan. I hate that I valued her happiness more than my own. But most of all, I hate that it took me so long to walk away. The moment I finally cut her off should have been empowering. It should have been a victory. But it wasn't. It just felt sad. Sad that I had wasted so much time. Sad that I had let myself be treated that way. Sad that I had to lose so much of myself just to realize I deserved more. I don't hate Emily. In fact, a part of me still hopes she's happy, that she's found whatever she was looking for. But I do resent the version of myself that let this happen. The person who was so blinded by love, or maybe just the idea of love, that he lost sight of his own worth. If I could go back, I wouldn't try to change her. I wouldn't beg her to choose me. I would just leave. Because if someone truly loves you, they won't make you feel like an option. And if you have to convince them to choose you, you've already lost.